My name is Lauren Barrett, and the last Christmas I spent with my family, I wasn't forgotten. I was erased. It didn't start with shouting or betrayal wrapped in drama. It started with silence. A group message. 3 lines. We've decided to cancel Christmas this year. Just too tight. Love you all. No explanation. No call. No invitation. But hours later, as I sat alone in a dim apartment surrounded by unmailed gifts I'd wrapped with shaking hands, I opened my phone. And there it was. Alyssa Barrett is going live. A full Barrett family Christmas bash. Streamers, music, toasts. Under a tree I paid for. Dancing in lights I'd bought. And right there, beneath the glow, my gift. The one I'd wrapped in silver ribbon. She opened it, laughed, called it From the Real Crew, and moved on. That night, something in me went still, but it wasn't weakness. It was decision. I didn't scream. I didn't call. I opened my laptop, pulled up the family financial spreadsheet, and started canceling everything. One auto payment at a time. One leech at a time. One lie at a time. Before I take you through what came next, the doorstep, the confrontation, the ledger, the fallout, tell me in the comments, have you ever been the reliable one until they decided you were disposable? Hit that subscribe button, because this isn't just a holiday story. It's what happens when the family accountant stops footing the emotional bill and sends an invoice instead. It should have been snow that woke me, but it was silence. No notifications, no early bird shipping alerts, just the soft hum of my old radiator and the low crackle of wind pressing against my window. I sat up in bed, not because I was ready to move, but because my back ached from too many nights curled wrong on a lumpy mattress. Outside, the snow was fresh, clean, deceptively gentle. Inside, my apartment looked like a discount gift shop had exploded in reverse. Orderly rows of color-coded wrapping paper, bows sorted by sheen, and a stack of receipts rubber-banded into a neat column on the corner of my desk. I shuffled toward the kitchen, still in leggings and the oversized thermal shirt I always wore when the heating dipped. The cocoa from last night was still in the cup, pale and half-drunk. The marshmallows now just a sugar ring. I nuked it without thinking. The box for Alyssa was the last one I hadn't taped shut. The sneakers had cost me 2 weeks of lunches and a one-time lift I knew I'd regret. But she had mentioned them once. Just once. In October, and I remembered. Of course I remembered. I always did. The tissue paper folded in clean triangles as I wrapped them, my hands methodical. A familiar rhythm. Fold, tuck, tape. The kind of thing that told me I was still part of something, even when no one else said so. I opened the Excel file, Christmas receipts, family fund ledger.xlsx, and added the entry, Alyssa's shoes, $239.99. The column auto-adjusted. My formula summed the subtotal, $3,812.64. A text chimed. Group message, Barrett's 2024. Diane, we've decided to cancel Christmas this year. Just too tight. Love you all. That was it. 3 lines. No explanation, no, we'll do something small. Just too tight. I blinked. Maybe it was a mistake. I waited. 30 seconds, a minute, then Alyssa changed the group chat photo to a pixelated stock image of a melting snowman. No caption. My thumb hovered. I opened the keyboard. Closed it. Reopened it. Understood. I pressed send. Then I closed the app. I didn't cry. I picked up the white satin ribbon with silver stars and tied it around Alyssa's gift. A perfect double loop bow. I placed the box beside the others. Unmailed, unsent, untouched. The apartment was still, save for the low hum of the fridge and the occasional gust of wind rattling the panes. I didn't bother turning on the lights. Just the little plug-in pine-scented candle I'd bought from Walgreens. It flickered beneath the kitchen counter, trying hard to smell like something it wasn't. Real. I pulled out the frozen lasagna from the back of the freezer. The plastic film crinkled as I slid it into the microwave, punching in the same 4-minute cycle I always used when I didn't want to feel. I sat at the table with the cocoa and a blank screen on my laptop. I didn't work. I didn't write. I didn't scroll. Until I did. My thumb slipped and suddenly Instagram opened. The blue-white glow of stories floated across the screen. I almost exited, until I saw it. Alyssa Barrett is going live. My hand froze on the phone. The microwave dinged, but I didn't move. Champagne popped, confetti flew, and I wasn't just forgotten. I was erased. The apartment was dark, save for the bluish wash of my laptop screen casting shadows on the coffee table. I hadn't turned on a single light since morning, December 25th. Normally a day of chaos, ribbons, wrappers, and my mom yelling at the dog for eating tinsel. But here? Stillness. Lasagna congealing untouched on my plate. Peppermint cocoa, now just a cup of pink residue. I clicked the notification out of reflex. Alyssa Barrett is going live. I expected something self-centered and mildly humiliating. Maybe her flaunting a skincare haul or fake crying into the camera about toxic energy. Something small. Something shallow. Something I could pity from a distance. Instead, I saw Christmas. A fully lit, roaring Christmas. The screen filled with gold and green garlands strung across the familiar archway in our Stillwater living room. A towering tree stood proudly in the background, glittering with white lights and red velvet bows. Laughter echoed as bodies swayed to a bass-heavy remix of All I Want for Christmas Is You. A DJ booth had been set up next to the fireplace. Yes, a full DJ. And the camera shook slightly as Alyssa jumped up and down in heels, squealing, "It's a vibe tonight." People I hadn't seen in years flitted in and out of frame. Cousins I'd only ever spoken to on Venmo. Aunt Meredith in her leopard print scarf, double-fisting eggnog and shouting something at the DJ. A child zipped past in a Santa onesie. I didn't even know who he belonged to. The banner above the kitchen entrance read, in bold cursive, Barrett Family Christmas Bash, 2024. I blinked. My eyes burned. Not from tears, those had dried days ago, but from how long I'd been staring at the screen. Behind Alyssa, my parents were dancing. My mother in a gold sequin top I'd seen her wear only once, for my college graduation dinner, which she'd left early. My father was laughing, hands loose on her waist, his mouth open in exaggerated delight. At one point, they both clinked glasses with Alyssa, who turned to the camera and said, as if it were some casual blessing, "Merry Christmas from the real crew." The real crew. I didn't exit the stream. I didn't type a comment. I just sat, fingers curled over the trackpad, breathing like I had a weight pressing on my chest. My lasagna sat untouched on the couch arm. The pine-scented candle had long since flickered out. And then, because life is petty and loves a flourish, Alyssa turned the camera toward the gift table. A folding table draped in red velvet. Piles of boxes neatly stacked and bowed. Tissue paper poking from the sides like frosting. She zoomed in on a sparkly gift bag, pulling it open with performative flair. Let's see what we got here. Ooh, this one's heavy. She adjusted the angle slightly. The bottom corner of the screen showed a box. A familiar box. White paper with silver stars. A double loop ribbon, precisely tied. My ribbon. There, in block letters on the tag, to Alyssa, from Lauren, I stared. She had opened it, displayed it, and hadn't even bothered to lie about its origin. Just absorbed it into her feed like I was an anonymous sponsor for her highlight reel. I closed the laptop. I didn't scream, didn't cry, didn't throw it across the room like some dramatic movie version of myself. I just leaned back against the couch and stared at the ceiling, which had developed a soft, flickering shadow from the street lamp outside. Somewhere between midnight and dawn, I fell asleep, still wearing yesterday's socks. When I woke up, the apartment was gray-blue with morning. My phone buzzed once. A message from Dad. Can you send the $3,100 for January? Need it ASAP. I didn't scream. I didn't curse. I logged in and started unplugging, one service at a time. The morning after Christmas tasted like metal. The peppermint cocoa was stale. My lasagna from 2 nights ago had fused into a brick in the fridge. I sat in silence, wrapped in a knit cardigan I didn't remember putting on, and stared at my laptop like it was a loaded weapon. The dashboard took a second to load. When it did, there it was. The entire map of my quiet enablement. Dad's rent autopay, still going $1,500 every first of the month. Alyssa's phone bill, the same plan I opened for her in college, upgraded 3 times since, $120 a month. Mom's grocery deliveries, Instacart tied to my debit card. I paid for someone else's organic yogurt. There were others, Netflix, Spotify family, car insurance for a vehicle I'd never driven. Years ago, Dad told me I was the most reliable person he knew. He'd said it with pride, like I should be flattered. But now, watching the money trail wind through a life I wasn't even invited to anymore, it just felt like a leash I had let them attach, link by link. Click, canceled. Click, service ended. Click, card removed. Each confirmation screen gave a dull thud of satisfaction. Not victory, but liberation. A peeling away. I opened the spreadsheet. Christmas receipts, family fund ledger. A dull green highlight tracked each expense. I added a new column. Terminated, December 26th. And then an alert. Unusual login attempt detected. Device, Apple iPad, model 2017. Location, Stillwater, Minnesota. Familiar device. I hadn't touched that iPad in 2 years. I'd left it at their house after a Thanksgiving visit. No one mentioned it. I figured it was in some drawer, gathering dust. The email that followed came from Sophie Lang, Client Protection, North Star Federal. Hi, Lauren. We've detected 3 failed login attempts to your banking portal originating from a previously linked device at the Stillwater address. For your security, we've temporarily flagged the account. Please confirm if this was you. Best, Sophie Lang. I stared at the email. My fingers felt icy on the keyboard. I called immediately. Sophie picked up on the second ring, her voice smooth and professional. This is Sophie Lang. It wasn't me, I said. She paused. Understood. We've attached a report of the access attempts to your secure inbox. You might want to update your 2-factor settings. And Lauren? We've seen this before. I'm sorry. I thanked her. Hung up. Sat in the quiet hum of my home office as the sun dissolved behind winter gray clouds. I opened the secure inbox. There it was. Access report. IP 192.168.0.87. Barrett residence. Device ID iPad-3.1.4.2. 020 attempts. 3 denied. They hadn't even tried to cover it up. I dragged the report into a new folder. Renamed it Proof Barrett Fallout. The folder was empty for now, but it wouldn't be for long. I stood, grabbed my coat, my keys, looked back at the glowing screen, still logged in, still counting. And I said aloud, for the first time in days, let's finish this. I didn't knock twice, just once. They knew it was me. The porch lights were still wrapped in tinsel, half of them flickering like dying stars. A plastic reindeer lay sideways on the lawn, antlers cracked, forgotten. I could hear the hum of the furnace inside. Someone turned the volume down on the TV. A few seconds passed. Then the door creaked open. Dad stood there in a wrinkled flannel shirt and mismatched socks, eyes wide but unreadable. The kind of expression people wear when the doorbell means consequences. Lauren, he said. I didn't answer. I stepped inside. The house smelled like stale wine and pine. Confetti shimmered in the carpet. A balloon clung to the ceiling corner like it hadn't gotten the memo that the party was over. I scanned the living room. The exact one I'd seen through Alyssa's live stream. The one where my handwriting sat on a gift box next to a banner that declared, Barrett Family Christmas Bash. Where's the iPad I left here? I asked. Not harsh. Not sweet. Just precise. Dad blinked. iPad? What iPad? The one I used during Thanksgiving 2 years ago. I left it on the entryway table. I got busy. No one followed up. Diane emerged from the kitchen, still in slippers, her hair tied up in a loose bun. She looked older than I remembered, like guilt had stolen some of her sharpness. "We didn't think you'd notice," she murmured, folding her arms tightly across her chest. I pulled a folded sheet from my coat pocket and handed it to Dad. Access report. North Star Federal Device. iPad dash. 3.1420 location. Stillwater, Minnesota. Attempts 3 failed. Time, December 25th, 2024, 10:46 p.m. His hand trembled slightly as he read it. Diane moved closer to look. The silence stretched, heavy and humming. A voice floated down from the stairs. "Lauren?" "Alyssa." She stood in an oversized hoodie, mascara smudged under her eyes like she'd cried either recently or performatively. Her voice cracked a little, like she was practicing remorse but hadn't committed to the part. Listen, I didn't know." I didn't look at her. I stayed focused on the people who'd tried to siphon my life in the name of love and family. "You didn't just cut me out of Christmas," I said quietly. "You tried to steal from me." Dad tried to speak, some mix between protest and apology, but I raised a finger. No shouting. No bargaining. "That's a crime," I finished. They stood there, caught not by drama, but by fact. By evidence they couldn't spin. No one moved. I stepped back toward the door. My shoes made a soft click on the hardwood floor, louder than any of their voices had been. As I reached the threshold, I turned back. Alyssa had sat down on the third step, head bowed. Diane leaned against the wall like her legs might give out. Dad looked down at the paper like it had betrayed him personally. "I came for what's mine," I said. I opened the door, cold air sweeping in around me. "And I'm taking back the rest soon." They sent texts, then emails, then a handwritten letter. None of it mattered anymore. January 2nd was all melt and silence. The snow that once blanketed the city had thinned into gray slush, retreating from the curbs like shame. In my apartment, the heater hummed low. I hadn't lit a candle or turned on music. I didn't need distraction today. I needed clarity. The printer spat out the final page with a mechanical whir. 4 pages, crisp and stapled, each word deliberate. I set it atop the growing stack on the kitchen counter. Beneath it, the financial ledger. 2 pages titled, Unreciprocated Contributions, 2018 to 2024, in neat rows, rent payments, utilities, holiday expenses, grocery orders, insurance premiums. Each one marked, paid by Lauren Barrett. Each line its own tiny goodbye. And then the final sheet. Deed confirmation, land transfer to Minnesota Youth Housing Trust. It had been the family's northern property, technically under my name after Grandma left it to me in her will. A quiet thank you for the summers I spent fixing her fence and walking her to church. For years, Dad had called it our insurance policy. He'd wanted to sell it. I never let him. Now it belonged to something better. I paperclipped the documents into 3 identical packets. Certified envelopes. Tracked. Signed for. Mom. Dad. Alyssa. I placed them in a tote bag, pulled on my coat, and walked to the post office down the block. The sky was a bruised lavender, the air sharp with the sting of winter returning. At the counter, I watched the clerk scan each parcel. "Return address?" she asked. "Leave it blank." She raised an eyebrow but didn't question it. By the time I got home, my inbox was glowing. Subject? I read your letter. From Mom. I didn't open it. I didn't need to. The letter wasn't for reconciliation. It was for record. Its final paragraph read, "You didn't lose me when you lied. You lost me when you expected I'd stay anyway. No threats, no ultimatums, just the quiet boundary they never believed I'd draw." My phone buzzed later that night. Voicemail. Aunt Meredith. The tone of someone who'd only skimmed the headlines, not the full story. You've embarrassed the family. Are you proud of yourself? I stared at the screen. Let the voicemail expire in silence. Then I opened a text from Kayla. Brief, warm, like she knew I needed something small and kind. Studio's quiet this week. If you want space, key's where it always is. I looked around my apartment. The silence wasn't heavy anymore. It was mine. Tomorrow I'd go. Maybe I'd paint. Maybe I'd rest. But tonight, I filed the last of the receipts into the folder named Proof. Barrett fallout, closed the laptop, and let the room go dark. The silence didn't scare me anymore. It soothed me. Morning poured through the windows in sheets of gold. The kind of sunlight that warmed the hardwood floor before it ever touched your skin. I sat cross-legged in the middle of the room, coffee in hand, surrounded by half-unpacked boxes and the crisp blankness of possibility. The apartment still smelled faintly of fresh paint and lemon cleaner. It wasn't big, just 2 rooms and a sliver of a kitchen. But it was mine. No echoes of past Thanksgivings. No shoes I didn't wear lining the entryway. No refrigerator notes passive-aggressively reminding me to please chip in. Just light and breath. And a canvas that waited. Kayla had come by the day before, dropped off a key to the old studio she hadn't used in months. "It's all yours," she said, handing it over with a half-smile. I think it always was. I hadn't touched a brush in nearly 8 years. Life got in the way. Or maybe I just gave everything to people who couldn't see color in me. I pulled the canvas upright, laid out my paints, unwrapped a journal from a box labeled Lauren, college. Flipping through pages, I saw charcoal sketches of quiet faces, fragmented buildings, hands reaching out and never quite meeting. Then came the knock. A small brown package sat on the doormat. No return address, no markings except for my name, printed in neat Sharpie. Inside, a single Polaroid. My family, December 25th, 2024. The same living room I'd once called mine. Mom and Dad were in the center, champagne glasses mid-toast. Alyssa was holding the phone at arm's length, her smile wide, performative. Streamers dangled behind them, limp and gaudy. On the back, someone had scrawled in marker, "Still a great party." I stood there for a moment, staring. Not angry. Not sad. Just done. I slid the photo into a drawer and shut it gently, face down. Then I turned back to the canvas. I didn't paint them. I didn't paint my childhood home or the tree I bought them last year. I painted a woman alone in a snow-covered field. Her back to the viewer, footprints behind her, a storm clearing ahead. She wasn't hunched or running. She walked, shoulders straight, coat open to the cold. I signed it in the corner. LB-2025. My phone buzzed. Unknown number. I watched it ring. 3 times. 4. Then silence. I didn't pick up. Didn't wonder who it was. Instead, I sipped my coffee, turned back to the light, and let the silence stretch. Not empty this time, but whole. I used to think that love, real, unshakable love, could excuse everything. Missed calls, half-hearted apologies, vague texts on birthdays. I told myself they were just busy. That deep down they cared. That maybe I just needed to try a little harder, carry a little more weight, stay a little quieter. But then Christmas came. And they didn't just forget me. They erased me. They toasted to each other under lights I paid for, danced in front of a tree I'd bought the year before, and opened presents I'd wrapped with trembling hands. Every ribbon tied with hope they didn't deserve. They told me it was tight this year, while sipping sparkling rosé and laughing in a house full of warmth I was never invited into. That's when the truth stopped whispering and started screaming. I didn't scream back. I logged in, I unplugged, I documented. And when the login attempt came from that dusty old iPad, the one I left behind like a breadcrumb from a younger, more forgiving version of me, I knew this wasn't just neglect. It was theft. Willful, entitled, and ugly. I stood on their porch with evidence in hand. I didn't ask why. I didn't wait for excuses. I stated what I knew, and I left. Not as a daughter groveling for a seat at their shrinking table, but as a woman reclaiming every dollar, every memory, every shred of power they thought I would just leave behind. When I sent the legal packet, the itemized ledger, the letter of disassociation, the land deed, it wasn't revenge. It was closure. They used to call me the reliable one, as if reliability was a leash, as if showing up was something to be punished for. But the moment they realized I'd stopped showing up, their texts came like rain. Too late, too insistent, and far too familiar. I didn't answer. I moved into a space with bare walls and open air. I painted. I breathed. I stopped checking for their names in every notification. I didn't need them to apologize. I didn't even need them to understand. I just needed them gone. One day, I'll walk past someone who looks like them. Same laugh, same perfume, same way of tilting their head when they're about to lie. And I won't flinch. I won't smile either. I'll keep walking. Because freedom isn't about silence. It's about choosing peace. Deliberately, repeatedly, fiercely. They thought I would stay out of guilt, out of loyalty, out of love. But loyalty without reciprocity is just servitude. And love that punishes you for showing up is just manipulation in better lighting. I chose me, and I didn't do it loudly. I just did it permanently. She didn't need applause. She needed space, and the courage to take it. What began as a quiet rejection turned into something more powerful. The deliberate dismantling of a system built on guilt and silence. Injustice thrives when we teach ourselves to swallow it for the sake of peace. But real peace demands confrontation. Real closure is earned, not gifted. And real strength doesn't always arrive with a scream. Sometimes it moves in quiet, decisive steps. Like frost melting under steady light, deception faded when truth stood its ground. Because in the end, no one can take what you've reclaimed with clarity, proof, and the audacity to walk away without looking back. I used to think love meant always giving. Giving time, giving silence, giving second chances. And then Christmas came, and they gave me clarity. They toasted under lights I paid for, danced in a house I'd once called home, and opened gifts I wrapped with trembling hands, without ever wondering where I was. That's when the truth stopped whispering and started screaming. I didn't scream back. I documented, I unplugged. I walked away. Not as a daughter begging for space at a shrinking table, but as a woman reclaiming every piece of herself they mistook for convenience. This isn't a story about revenge. It's a story about record keeping, about knowing what was taken, about drawing the kind of boundary they never thought I'd enforce. So to anyone watching this who's ever been called too sensitive for noticing the harm, or too cold for finally cutting it off, let me tell you this: you're not broken. You're awake. And no matter what they tell you, silence is not weakness. Sometimes it's survival. Sometimes it's the first sound of freedom. If you've ever paid the price for someone else's comfort, if you've ever stayed because you're the strong one, until they turn that strength into obligation, if you've ever wrapped gifts for a party you weren't invited to, I hope this story found you. And I hope it gave you permission to pause, to recalculate, to leave not in anger, but in clarity. Because walking away doesn't mean giving up. Sometimes it's the most faithful thing you can do for yourself. Let me know in the comments. Have you ever been the one who kept giving until you had to stop? Have you ever drawn a boundary that saved you? Don't forget to like, subscribe, and share this with someone who might need to hear it. You never know who's sitting in a dark room right now, wondering if they're the problem, when really they're the proof that survival is quiet and brave and absolutely valid. From the bottom of my heart, thank you for being here, for listening, for seeing the story not just for what happened, but for what it revealed. This channel isn't just about storytelling. It's about truth-telling, even when it's uncomfortable. even when the ribbon looks pretty. Until next time, I'm Lauren Barrett. And if no one said it to you lately, I'm proud of the way you're learning to protect your peace.